Joining us on the show, director Tom Holland. Tom, thanks so much for stopping by today and to help us celebrate Fright Night's 30th anniversary.
Yes, well, I'm thrilled to be here. I'm also a writer as well as a director.
That's true. You are a hyphen. You're a writer-director. That's right.
Right. Started out as an actor.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's getting too many hyphens now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Too many unions.
Yeah, those union fees start piling up after a while, so you got to start dropping some things to just,
They sure do. Well, you can't drop them. That's great.
All right, yeah, but we're here to talk about Fright Night, and I think the interesting thing about Fright Night is it embraces the tradition and cliches of classic vampire movies without any cynicism. Especially now, that's such a breath of fresh air. So, Tom, are you an optimist by nature?
I'm paranoid by nature. Well, I was an optimist when I wrote it, and I directed it, which I guess was 1984. I was brimming with more optimism than I am right now.
Yeah.
You know what's so interesting about Fright Night 2 is that late night movies just seemed like something you would unearth in a time capsule right now. It just seems so almost foreign in a way. Now, do you feel the same way about Fright Night? Is a movie like Fright Night even possible in today's times?
Boy, that's a terrific question. I don't know, but I would doubt it because it was my love letter to fans everywhere, because it was about my growing up and being a fan. And you're right, it seems like the dark ages, but then, you could only, on television, you could only see a horror movie on like the Friday Night Frights at 11 o'clock on an independent channel. And so many of them had horror hosts. You see the echo with Vampira, but you had Stagger Lee, you had Horace. I think it was sort of an endless list, and they were amazingly tacky. The sets would be falling down, but that would fly through, and you'd see the string supporting it. But it was all in great. It was in great fun, and it was and it was very, very affectionate. So there was definitely an innocence in those times. And you have to remember, when I was growing up, what I grew up with as a kid, a young fan, and I can't remember how old I was, 10, 11, 12, 13, you had the AIP horror movies, which were essentially rip-offs of the Hammer horror movies. So what you had these heavily saturated period pieces, that were shot very, very traditionally. It was, if you went in for a close-up, it was a big deal. And they didn't believe in inserts either. And gosh knows, there certainly wasn't a high quotient of violence or blood, but they were great fun. They were echoes of the 30s classical horror movies from Universal that I grew up and I just loved them. And, all of it changed in my lifetime. It changed in 1961 with Psycho. And, and that began where we are now. That's the beginning of the cycle of what we consider modern horror. But Fright Night was a love letter to fans everywhere, and especially those who'd grown up loving the classic movies, like Frankenstein and Dracula and The Mummy and The Invisible Man. And I think the reason that it's lasted and it's growing and it has been shown generation to generation, almost like being passed down, is because of that innocence. I don't think I was aware of it at the time, but there's a sweetness to Fright Night.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the local TV horror hosts. Here in Kansas City, we had Kermisha Mortem. Is there a particular host that you have fond memories of, or a favorite?
Well, I remember Vampira, and I remember the one that came before her, that Jimmy Dean watched, for God's sakes. There was another woman, and I can't remember her name right now. She was married to a writer that's now passed, but I knew. But it was just a tradition. And no, I don't remember. I grew up in mid-state New York in a small town across from Poughkeepsie, which is apple orchards and dairy farms, or it was then anyway. Now it's becoming like a bedroom community in New York City. But there was just, it was an outlaw genre then, and I don't remember, I don't remember the specific names anymore. No, I don't.
I gotcha.
Now, so for the character of Jerry, like, how did you and Chris Sarandon work on that specific characterization? I mean, he's a pure bad guy, but he's got so much dimension to him.
Well, he's got heart. I don't want to say he doesn't want to be a vampire, but you know that he's trapped down through the ages. You know that that Harker, Nina Harker, the woman he was in love with in the original and in the Bram Stoker novel, that somehow Amy echoes her as though she's a descendant of Nina Harker, or at least part of her soul got caught in there. You know that Jerry feels and that he loves, along with being a bad guy. He's the bad guy you hope to love. There's something else too. When I did Fright Night, the genre was dead, and to play on words is unconsciously. But vampire movies had died and gone away. Universal had a huge disaster with Dracula, the stage musical, doing that, and then to show the complete exhaustion of the genre, you'd had a farce, Love at First Bite with George Hamilton. So everybody thought I was insane to be doing a modern vampire movie. They thought that I was the one that was, that had a few loose screws. It's hard to imagine now because we've just gone through a hyper cycle of vampire films with the Twilight series and so many. But at that moment in time, I was reinventing the genre.
Right.
Yeah, no doubt.
In other words, it was an open field. I wasn't trapped into recreating one in a series of popular vampire films. I had no sense of trying to reinvent the genre. It was just that it was so damn much fun. Well, it was fun because you had a blank slate, and it was a funny idea at its core. I mean, I was writing Cloak and Dagger. I don't know if you guys remember that film, but that was a very, very loose remake of Cornell Woolrich's Window, and that had, of course, the great Hitchcockian theme of watching people. It was the juvenile version of Rear Window, and I thought to myself as I was writing Cloak and Dagger, how hilarious it would be if a teenage fan became convinced that his next-door neighbor was a vampire, because certainly no one would believe it. And there's something inherently humorous, in that concept, and that led to playing the humor of it. And so that sort of led to the invention of the genre of the comedy horror movie, which, in my memory, it was in short supply back then. But all of it was accidental. You're working within the culture and within the flow of it, and you don't make conscious decisions about putting in the humor or what level of violence or all of those things. I just wrote the best possible story that I could, but I must say I had the giggles during a lot of it. I enjoyed myself immensely writing it.
That's important then.
Yes.
It's terribly important because the tone or the voice that's in the act of creation, the script carries over into the movie. I could go on and on. I mean, nobody at Columbia. I was the throwaway film. Fright Night was the one that they was the little one that they weren't spending any money on. That nobody thought would amount to anything within the studio system. Their big film that year was a movie called Perfect. Did you guys remember that? Which
Right.
was two of the hottest actors in Hollywood, John Travolta and Jamie Lee Curtis. And Columbia's attention was solely on that movie, and I had absolutely no interference on Fright Night, which is the first and the last time I've ever had that experience with the studio system. But that was only because it was their throwaway to fill in the last place on the slot of their delivery schedule. So I was just very lucky in a whole bunch of ways, and of course I didn't have a clue.
Nice. Hey, Tom, what exactly was Billy Cole?
A good question. He was in transition. He was the helper. He was the
Renfeld?
give me the name. Yeah, Reinfeld. Right? Give it to me again.
Renfeld, yeah.
Renfeld. Yes, he was Renfeld in transition. He hadn't shared enough blood to turn into a full vampire, but it was the promise of eternal life that kept him, in place with Jerry Dandridge. And so that was why we were able to kill him, but only after having to work at it very, very hard. And I thought Jonathan Stark did a great job, by the way.
Oh,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was something else. Jonathan Stark was very busy with the ground room. Jonathan Stark was a comic actor. He went on. I'm going to have lunch with him next week. But he went on to create the Jim Belushi show. I mean, he's a comedy writer. I mean, so I did a lot of that kind of thing. Where I cast people that could also catch the comic quality of the script, and that was done deliberately. And it worked out great. Terrific group of actors.
Absolutely, yeah. And another part of the film that I just absolutely love is Brad Fiedel's score, and it fits the film so perfectly. Now, how has that developed between him and you?
Brad had done one of the first electronic scores, which was Terminator. Now, it had been done before that. I think Billy Friedkin used electronic score in the remake of Wages of Fear. But it didn't really, doing electronic didn't really explode in popularity until Terminator. And so I wanted to have a modern score that would appeal to a teenage audience, but I was also mixing in old-fashioned with brand new, trying to harken back in a lot of ways to the classic horror films of the Hammer period, but also making it as hip and modern as I could at the same time. And Brad was brilliant. But his score for Terminator was brilliant too. So it was a lot of things coming together. And I had a music supervisor who was still a dear, dear friend, and we worked together, named David Shacklin. And I can't remember. I think it was David's idea to write original songs for the movie that reflected on the drama that was going on in the individual scenes. So we went through the script and we talked about where we could put in songs with popular groups that amplified whatever was going on in the scenes themselves. And I think that was very unusual then, and I think now. But those songs were deliberately written for Fright Night, and I think that's why the album has proved to be so popular.
Right.
And my memory also is that Brad did an instrumental version of Armies of the Night, the Seduction song, and then at the same time, he also did a version where you hear people singing, and Brad did both of those, and I know that both of those are out there on release. Both of them are released. So I mean, there were a lot of things going on musically in that script that were deliberate and very new for the time. And I don't know if anybody ever realized it, but it's a very successful and much loved score and soundtrack.
Absolutely. There's actually some online debate about this too. What was Evil Ed's fate?
Well,
because there's the scare at the end.
Well, I think in the script, the intention was that he was killed. But now, if I ever got a chance to do a sequel or a remake or whatever, I'd bring Evil Ed back because Stephen Jeffries did such a terrific job with him. But I meant for him to die, but I meant for it to be a scene of an emotional quality,
Yes.
Because there's something tragic about it. It's the lure of the kid that everybody picks on to become powerful and able to take on anybody in high school and stop the torture and everything else. But at the same time, that if Jerry hadn't bit him, he would have been a very nice guy because it wasn't in Stephen's makeup to be a bad guy. Stephen is the closest thing I guess we have to a victim in the script.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
There's a kind of tragic and crazy connection to Fright Night that's out there. Is rumor has it that you and Roddy McDowall were set to meet with Jose Menendez to talk about doing Fright Night 3.
That's a true story.
Did you know Jose at all, or had you?
No, I didn't. Roddy had dealt with him, and Roddy had set up the script, had set up the meeting, and Roddy was pursuing it because he loved the part so much. So he wanted to recreate the part of Peter Vincent. It's never nice to speak ill of the dead, but Roddy also said he was the worst human being that he'd ever met. The guy apparently was a terrible human being, but that's not to excuse what the kids did.
Right, absolutely.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
Wow.
But that's one of those situations where you hear the story and it's all done, and you and your mouth falls open. You can't believe any of it.
Right.
Because it's so horrifying. I'm a nice middle class boy at heart. But I could never imagine murdering my parents. So Menendez himself, the father, must have been the devil incarnate.
Jeez.
Wow.
That's a terrible, tragic story for everybody involved. But he just must have been god awful.
Oh, wow.
When Roddy said that, I was at his house and we were having dinner, and I thought he just meant that the guy was extremely difficult to bargain with, but it must have gone way beyond that because Roddy was a kind man. Roddy wasn't somebody who would say that casually or as an aside. The guy must have really had emotional problems.
Wow.
That began the whole thing of trying to figure out where the hell the rights had gone. Because then it turned into, this is a story, a Hollywood story, a business story, but I'd originally done it with Herb Jaffe, the producer from Vista, and I brought Herb in on it. Herb set up a company off the strength of the success, and did Fright Night 2 with Tommy Lee Wallace, and then Herb did a bunch of pictures that didn't make money, and the company went under, and somehow this video company that Menendez represented or ran at the time ended up with a right. I don't know how. And then when Menendez was killed and video started to fail, somehow Carolco bought it.
Right.
And Carolco got the rights to Fright Night. And then Carolco, which was, one of the first big foreign sales companies, they went bankrupt.
Yeah.
and the rights got bought by a company in Florida, down in southern Florida on the west coast. And all that company did was buy up rights to movies that they buy up copyrights of companies that have gone bankrupt, and they turn around and they sell the copyright. And off of that, somehow DreamWorks ended up, with the rights to Fright Night and did the remake that they did with, a couple of years ago.
Right.
It's amazing.
That's a crazy story.
Crazy
so
story.
Freaking crazy, yeah.
Crazy story.
All right,
And all off an idea that I had when I was writing Cloak and Dagger.
Right.
So,
Well, Tom, thanks again for stopping by. Fright
Well,
Night
thank
is
you very
Fright
much.
Night is a hell of a movie, and we're so glad to help celebrate it.
well, I'm so glad that I gave you an exciting night in your youth, and I'm thrilled that you enjoyed it so much that you wanted to talk to me now. And go watch it again.
I intend to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, Tom. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, fellas. Good luck with the show. May everybody in the world listen. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye. Man, Tom is so much fun.
Oh yeah, totally. It's a great guy to talk to. I was fascinated with a lot. I mean, you do a really good job of researching your questions and trying to find out things that are. It's funny how our interviews kind of work. Is you are like the investigative reporter trying to drill deep on topics that are debated online. I'm more along the lines of like, did you have fun making this movie? No, I think there's duality of trying to get the person into the headspace of where they were at when they were making the movie, and then get questions that are lingering answered. And I think together we do a good job with that. But yeah, I thought that was great. Getting his take on Evil Ed.
Yeah, I was surprised by that.
And the fact that he did consider him dead, but he wanted to bring him back for a sequel. In fact, if I do recall this, the John Grease character in Fright Night 2 was actually supposed to be Evil Ed.
Yes.
But there was like I think the actor was working on, was it 976 Evil, the Robert Englund directed movie?
I've never seen that. Was he?
I think he was working on that, so he couldn't do Fright Night 2, so they just cast John Grease, who I love John Grease too, by the way. Awesome actor. And anyway, so it was fascinating to find out that, yeah, he did die, but they were going to try to bring him back anyway. So I like that, and then kind of, getting confirmation what Billy Cole was. That was a cool question. I thought that was neat.
Yeah. If we can lay that one to rest, everybody. And the Evil Ed storyline continues in the comics. I mean, it's not canon or anything, or if there's even canon, but Evil Ed's still out there if you need more Evil Ed.
Oh yeah, right. And great character. He's a great character, and I wish I would have saw more Evil Ed in the original. Just a little bit more.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. And I was floored by how much Tom talked to us about the Fright Night 3 meeting that never happened.
I was too.
Just amazing.
It was. And you took that and turned it into an article.
Right. So, it was, I think it was published on the site a couple weeks ago. It's all about, how the Menendez brothers essentially killed Fright Night 3 when they killed their father, and just a fascinating story. And us talking with Tom about it off off the air essentially, and he confirmed that it was pretty much the first time that he's ever really talked about it in depth. So I feel kind of honored that he was so forthcoming with us about it, because it's a tragic story, and I remember it. I remember the Menendez trial. I remember that.
Yeah, their defense was their dad was a monster, was evil. Yeah,
they never said that they didn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
So, hey, and at least one person, like Roddy McDowell, agreed that it's the worst person he ever met.
Unbelievable.
Just amazing. Yeah. Tom Holland, really awesome, and he went on to do Child's Play as well.
Classic.
Cool movie. I like Child's Play, so it's awesome. And he recently was in the news again, and good for him, because the actor Tom Holland was cast as Spider-Man, so they had a lot of fun online with people congratulating this Tom Holland, writer-director Tom Holland, for getting the role of Spider-Man. So he had a lot of fun with that. He superimposed his face on the Spider-Man body. It was pretty neat. So
that's good.
Good sense of humor, this guy, and he's a fun follow on Twitter. So if you're on Twitter, follow this Tom Holland. I can't say anything about the other Tom Holland because I don't follow him, but I do follow this Tom Holland, and he's really fun on Twitter. So
yes,
I suggest you do it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I make it a rule not to follow anybody who's 14, 15. Oh boy. So I think that's a good place to close out this episode of Movies and Stuff.
Woo.
Final words.
You're so cool, Abe.
I know.